Shall we play a game?
We got Star Wars Unlimited. We got classic Star Wars games. We got old school D&D, independent RPGs, mini painting, Warhammer, of course, tons of other games. But first, we're gonna need some coffee here on Board Barista Productions. Hey everybody, it's your Board Barista Fen, and with me is Tanya.
Hey everybody, welcome to the retro reviews.
Yeah. All right, so it's the review show where we go through my copious amounts of D&D, other gaming books, magazines, paraphernalia one at a time. And Tanya has replaced Laura as our co-host for the foreseeable future. Tanya is new to role-playing games, has only been playing like a couple of years at this point.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
So, yeah, we're going to dive into this week. We're doing Dragon Magazine number 309, and I'm just going to go through the articles, and at any point that Tanya wants to ask a question or chime in, she is more than welcome to do so. So starting off, the theme, because every month they have a theme. This month we're going to war. Well, this issue we're going to war. The first article in this is, this is the period where D&D was going from 3rd edition to 3.5, basically fixing some stuff, nerfing some stuff, and buffing other stuff, just to make everything a little bit more game balanced, a little easier to understand. So they started off the issue with the 3.5 update news. This one is talking about character conversions. This is how to take your character from 3rd edition to 3.5. So the weapon size. So the basically it was the kind of thing like, how do you give like it used to be in old D&D, like a halfling couldn't really wield a greatsword because you needed to be like a medium-sized creature to be able to have that weapon. They decided to do weapon scaling, so they gave you a little thing of like, if you're using a small greatsword, this is what the damage is for it. If you're using like a large troll wielding a greatsword, it's actually scaled to be a large for that, not just like a one-handed. They also updated the skills. They reworked and renamed some of them. I know that handle animal became animal empathy, so it became like a druid and ranger class ability to actually interact and like to interact with animals and have them be more like pets. So they kind of scaled that away, reworked, took that out as being a skill, made it a class feature. Armor, they clarified armor types. So it used to just be like an AC bonus, a natural AC bonus. They actually went through and was like, okay, here's all the different types of armor bonuses. And nothing really stacks unless it's a different type. So if you are a creature that's got scales, so you got like a +1 natural armor, then you could throw like some brigadine or chainmail over that. So your natural armor, then your actual armor, then your shield, and then like magical bonuses and stuff like that. Those types stack, but if you're getting the same bonus from two different things, like a shield bonus. One of my favorite pieces of gear is called Dastana. It's the armored forearm bracers that go all the way from the elbow up to the hand, up to the back of the hand. Those gave a shield bonus in 3.5. So if you had those on, you couldn't actually wield a shield and the Dastana and have like everything stack.
Okay.
So you didn't have people like really like, oh, I'm wearing this and I'm wearing this and I'm wearing this. It's like, dude. You got to you can't have stackable same bonuses. A bunch of they were talking about how the magical items got reworked and tweaked. So some stuff doesn't do exactly the same thing as it used to do. So when you're going through and converting your character over to go and check your gear to be like, you might want to get something different. I think that's where like they started separating potions and oils. Like we had that come up in Jack's game where I had the question. It's like, is this a potion that affects, like I drink the potion and it affects my weapon? No. Clarification, it's supposed to be like an oil you put on that weapon. But because like that was broken, like Jack's whole thing of like drink the potion, it doubles your damage. It's like any of my damage?
Yeah.
But
he's 7, so he's learning. He
7,
wants to help everybody. He wants
I know,
everybody
and that's
to live.
a great thing about having. I like him DMing because he's all like rule of cool and Monty Hall. Here's a bunch of treasure and rewards, and it's just like here's monsters for you to beat up on, and I want to see you beat up on the monsters. It's like I can feel Josh when he's trying to help him DM. It's just like you got to kill the party because Josh is an old grognard AD&D first edition D&D DM where it's like he's a Gary Gygax DM that wants to kill the party, and Jack's just like here's cool stuff, and it's like okay, we're gonna have fun when Jack DMs.
DJ might come back if Josh doesn't DM.
Oh,
so fingers crossed.
Let him know I'm running Star Wars.
All right,
I would totally love to have DJ back in the mix. Yeah, Josh, like
he kills everybody.
I like it because it's the whole thing of like Josh challenges me as a DM. When he's DMing, he challenges me as a player. But there's a lot of times where I feel completely frustrated because I'm like, I don't have the thing to do this, and it's like, come on, man, come on. You gotta give me something here to go off of. All right, but back to the article. Again, like the magical items, scrolls and potions got tweaked based on how the spells got changed. And they also changed the weight of equipment, which I know me and Josh have never worried about encumbrance, about actually how much gear you're carrying around, because we're always just like, here's a bag of holding. Like, we're experienced players. We're just like, yeah, if it doesn't fit my basic gear, it goes in the bag of holding and I forget about it until it's like, how much stuff is actually in there? It's like, I don't know. Let me do the math and figure out if we actually got space or not. And also, like, with the skills getting reworked, feats also got reworked, and special abilities. And so some of the feats got changed around. So instead of like, I know some of the old ones used to be like a +2 bonus to certain skills. Those ones all got changed around. A lot of the combat feats stayed the same. But basically it was a lot of like the 3.5 updates. It's a lot of just balancing and just making stuff actually read better. Then the next article we have in the magazine, this one's actually kind of cool because it actually continues for a few pages. It's a brief history of warfare. So it goes over 9 principles of conducting war. And then there's like on the bottom of the pages as it continues for like the next 15 pages, there's like an inch and a half of like talking about like how warfare evolved from like the Bronze Age all the way through to like early modern age, where like almost like horseback warfare before World War I.
Okay.
Because World War I's where we basically get the invention of trench warfare and artillery.
Yeah, technically. But
no, the 9 principles, they talk about surprise, strike when you're not expected. Objectives is like to, when you go into war, actually have your objectives planned out and be like, okay, let's not get distracted. What are you trying to do with this battle? Like what key locations you're trying to take? The chain of command, make sure everything keeps flowing. Mobility, stay flexible and use the terrain. Economy of force, use maximum force when it's most useful. Security, don't let the enemy know your plans. Mass, keep your forces together. Offensive, strike when you have the advantage. Simplicity, I use the KISS planning to keep it simple, stupid. which actually those kind of principles of warfare work for not just like designing like a battle in D&D, but also like a lot of tabletop miniatures games. You know, like the objectives, score your primaries, get the actual points, and don't let your opponent know what you're doing, but also like try to make sure that you secure your side of the table. Don't let somebody get around behind you. All good tips. Next article is Beast of Battle. This is the bestiary column every month in Dragon magazine that has some new monsters. And these ones are all focused on war. So we got the Crawling Slaughter. It's a 20-foot across undead spider that's used by the drow. Yeah. We got the Death Hurler, a demonic siege tower made out of the bodies of the damned. Like, just think like a trebuchet, like one of those like breaching towers that's just made out of bodies. We got the Golem Swarm. Basically, it's a swarm of 6-foot tall stone golems. So basically, like they made like this tiny army of action figures. And I'm like, that would totally be the funniest thing to come across in a dungeon. Just like the hallway is just full of little tiny toy soldiers.
Oh, have you seen that movie though?
I have seen that movie, and I'm like, it was just like, that movie was so good. I've wanted to use that idea like in a game, just a bunch, like an army of toys. A lot. The Guardian Steed, it's Elven War Antelope. Because, they live in the forest. They're not going to have horses. That's a plains thing. Then last monster in the article is the War Drake. War dragons with a sonic breath weapon that can shatter metal and are actually bred to be ridden in combat. Then next article is Shut Up and Roll. It's 15 ways to speed up combat. I think this is like one of the areas where I think we all like when we're playing D&D, these are actually some really like good tips for every group to have. No, tip number 1, know what you're going to do before it's your turn. Use everyone else's turn to figure out, to look at. I know I had that problem. I was looking at, I was like, I'll wait until I'll let everybody else go because I got to look up a spell because I didn't have my player's handbook PDF brought up. Another piece, next one is don't give unsolicited advice. It's the other player's turn. Let them do what they want to do. Unless it's like a new player and you're trying to help, but let you focus on what you're going to do, not what other people are going to do.
Yeah, the bard constantly making the paladin go ahead of him, and it's like, no, you freaking do this your damn self.
Have notes on your character's skills, feats, and spells. I know I need to do that for my paladin because I keep looking up stuff. And just notes in general ends up speeding up stuff. Don't metagame information. How they were talking about metagaming this way is like basically is again with that same like don't give unsolicited advice. Like you don't try to think of the whole thing of like, well, if you're talking out the plan at the table, you end up that whole this is the plan time eats into this is what we're actually doing time. Keep the side talking to the DM to a minimum, because if you're trying to have a conversation with the DM and I'm trying to take my turn or vice versa, then one of us is distracting the DM from actually getting a person's turn taken care of. Don't overanalyze. I've seen some players get into that whole thing where they get into the tank thinking of like, what can I do? What can I do? Instead of just being like, all right, I'm just going to take an action. And not be like, well, if I do this, then this happens. I could do this. It's like, no, pick one. Don't let the characters act out of turn. Be hard and fast with the whole thing. Like, nope, it's this person's turn. Wait yours. Use minis in terrain so you don't have to restate locations. Ever since I started using minis for battles, I've enjoyed it because me and Josh, we used to do theater of the mind, where it's like we just sitting around all of a sudden in the same room on couches and chairs and rolling our dice on the floor or on the coffee table. But if there was every once in a while, it's like, wait, what's going on? Restate what's going on. Now, having the minis out there, people can be thinking their moves, turns, and stuff like that. I love the fact that we're using minis. Even with me being remote, having me be able to see like what's going on the table is great.
The air hockey table where we can't find some of the stuff that belongs to it, that's being converted into the gaming table.
Ooh, nice.
And it sits down. So, we'll be able to actually aim you a little bit better down.
Nice.
And maybe Josh will actually pick up the webcam you sent. That room in that direction is going to be the gaming room. That's where the pantry was supposed to be the dining room. It's now going to be turned into the gaming room.
All right.
And we have cabling and a track bar like right in the ceiling, so we can actually put the camera right up there.
Nice.
And a power outlet high on the wall that actually will reach there. So we're covered.
Nice. Next way to speed up combat is push for commitment of actions. That kind of ties in with the don't overanalyze. Like, have people be ready. It's like, it's your turn. What are you doing? Don't hum and haw. First thing off the top of your head. What are you doing? Granted, sometimes that might be a little too rushed for some players, but and next piece of advice: don't be afraid to wing it. A lot of times where it's like, okay, how does that actual rule take place? If you got to take the time to look up the rule, it's okay to be like, all right, we're just going to do it like this. I'll figure out how that actually works next time if I'm getting it wrong. Or if you need to, have other players look up the rules, stuff that people who are not having a turn this time or who are not currently actively, like they've already taken their turn for the turn. Just be like, hey, can you check up, hand the book over, be like, look up this rule for me real quick. Come prepared. I think every piece of gaming advice that we've talked about in like the past 3 episodes has always been like, come prepared, come prepared, come prepared, come prepared.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
One of our players does not have a full character development. So it's like, okay, I have access to this particular website. I will develop that character for you and hand you your sheet. And from there, you write on at that. The other one, he's got 3-4 different sheets going of a character sheet of the same character because he doesn't know how to update his own sheet. But the sheets stay instead of go with because they forget them. So.
Oh yeah, I love having like basically get some of those clear full page paper sheets and one of the like flimsy folders that's got the clasp, so you can actually put the brads, so you can actually put like those 3 written hole punched papers into. I loved having those as like little character. I bought actually like they're the small plastic folders that have those in them. I bought some of those from Dollar Tree, and I made like character binders. And basically, it's like if I give somebody a magical item, I could just hand them out the index card. I'd also do like quick little note index cards for their spells. Had those, kept those for the group I was playing Pathfinder with, and they're all ready to rock and roll, have all their stuff on it in that binder. Don't need to access the rule books. Just flip through things and be like, okay, yeah, I got that. So those prepared things like that is awesome. Next piece of advice: roll your attack and damage dice at the same time. So that way, if it's like I rolled a hit, here's the damage, You don't have to sit there and be like, okay, roll the hit. Okay, now I roll my damage. It speeds it up just a little bit. Sometimes I'm like, if a player wants to do that, I'm like, good for you. I know sometimes it's like a whole feel bad moment where it's like you roll really great on the damage dice, but then you're like really bad on the attack dice. So I'm just like, if you don't want to have that feel bad moment, you don't have to do it. Because it's like, I mean, if you're rolling like 3d8 for your damage and you roll that d20 and it comes up a 1 and you've rolled like 3 7s, you're like, I would have done so much damage. But if you can get over the feel bads, roll your damage and attack dice at the same time. Next piece of advice, remember the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated. If you don't want to have somebody interrupting on your turn or distracting the DM, then you need to not do those things as well. Another thing that can speed up combat is just use a timer. I've got a little hourglass timer sitting on my desk for when I know somebody's like trying to think of something and they're going into the tank. I'll start the hourglass. It's a 1 minute like brushing your teeth one. You get from one of my friends. He got it for his kid. Got like 3 of these, like one every doctor visit. So he's just like, you need an hourglass? I'm like, yeah, dude, I was looking for one of these. So he gave it to me, and it's a good little 1 minute timer to be like, all right, you really need some time to think and plan out your turn. Here's a minute. But after that, I need you to tell me, what are you doing? Next article is the Art of D&D. It's a more in-depth look at Sun Tzu's Art of War and how to apply to D&D games. Again, this is going to come up every time we talk about how to improve your game. Prep. Know where you're going to fight and plan to use locations. So if the DM's prepped up their battle map and has everything, yee. It's better to underestimate than overestimate. So if you, like for a DM, if you don't plan out the whole campaign and you just plan out the notes, that way it's like if the players decide to go off on a tangent somewheres, you don't have like all this work that you put into it completely go to waste because you've like went down the rabbit hole and plotted out everything that you needed for this, like how you saw the campaign go. Another piece is use greed as bait. I've had some, I know not every D&D player is a murder hobo. But treasure and magical items and rewards, every player wants these things. And you always have at least one person in the party that's got a little bit more greed in them than everybody else. And it's a really great plot hook to be like, here's a bunch of treasure, here's a bunch of money. What do you want to do? And you know the one person in the group is going to be like, I want that. And it's going to be the whole thing of like dragging the rest of the party into the adventure. Next advice was that the art from the Art of War is be wary of combined forces, which is like also a good tip for DMs. Like last week we were talking about monster combos, like the idea of like it's good to like when you can have two things work together against the party. It's good, but also it can be a little bit overdone. Another piece of advice is, the Art of War says to like let your opponent's emotions get the better of them. I wrote it down as let the opponent's tilt. So if you want to be the mischievous DM, or you want to get the DM, or you want to like you're the player that wants to get the DM to tilt to get into their feelings and not really focus, you can kind of swing a combat situation. Because if your DM's getting frustrated, it leads to them making bad decisions with the monsters, which allows the party to be like, okay, you're not using all the optimal tricks and tactics here. Let's do something creative. Which that can go either way. Another piece of advice from that is never trust a rogue. I feel as a DM, some of the best laid plots and traps when it comes to the thief in the party, it always does not go off how you plan. Because there's always going to be the whole like, well, I'm the thief, I can just disable this. And then you're like, I spent so much time trying to figure this out. It's like, if you're putting traps in and you got a competent thief, make that trap always a little bit harder. Use speed and speed bumps to control the tempo and to use up resources. So if you like, I had this great combat I did in a game where I actually had a bunch of constructs that were fighting the party, and there was rangers that were hidden in the trees. They were shooting arrows at the constructs. The party thought that this was like some people there to help them, but it was actually I was using arrows of repair. So they were like magical, like healing arrows to heal the constructs. So it was like keeping them in the fight and making everybody else in the party use more resources. They were losing more hit points. They were casting more spells to try to deal with these constructs. So it's if you do that as a DM, try to drain the resources before the party gets to the big bad at the end of the dungeon or adventure. They're not like fully fresh and able to end up being a bit more challenge. Or you can have it be the other way, where if you allow people to rest too much, the big challenge might be if they come into it too fresh, they've got too many excess healing potions and spell slots, then it's not really that much of a challenge. So there's a thought of like how to control the tempo of the game. Another piece of advice from this is plan for the long game, which I think, because it ends up being the whole fact of like, if you are only meeting for like 2 hours a week or 2.5 hours a week for a D&D game, you know, somewhere along on the lines of like 1.5 hours to 2 hours and a half, I think is like the perfect length of a D&D session. You know, you don't want to have it go longer than a movie.
Okay. That's actually good to know. So I won't torment anybody on Saturday when I run the DM table.
Yeah, well, you think about it. It's the whole thing of you get the like first half hour is everybody getting together and hanging out, shooting the breeze, having some food, and then you settle into the game time. And then it's like the mind only, like as a teacher, I was taught the mind only retains as much as the butt can endure. So if you keep it to the length of like a movie, then it ends up being like, oh yeah, you're good. But if you plan for the long game, is like plan to have the game last like that long, like that 2.5 hour, like we're sitting through, and you know, the Lord of the Rings extended version lets you have enough stuff to actually go through for the gaming session. If you know if things take too long, you can always just like stop at a good cliffhanger moment and pick up the next week. But then again, as the player planning for the long game, that's thinking about going back to the, you know, resources of like, if you're going to be in here and you're not going to be able to get a rest or a resupply for a while, you need to think, do I really need to waste this like 3rd level spell slot when I could just use a 1st level spell slot? Do I really need to, okay, what's my hit points at right now? Do I really need healing? Or can I take another hit? You know, plan out Don't be like, oh, I took a point of damage. Somebody heal me real quick. It's like, you're only down a point. Yeah, but I'm not at full. It's like, you're going to make me waste all of my healing spells on you, and we're not going to have them when we really need them. And then, of course, the other piece of advice, the opposite of that, is to hit hard and fast so you don't have to go long. You know, as the DM, you know, a lot of the monsters, they're not going to survive into like 5, 6, 7 rounds of combat. So it's good to actually like use all the big, powerful stuff at the beginning of combat, because chances are that monster is going to die really fast.
Yeah. I don't know what level they put those monsters at the other night. That was a hard kill. It wasn't even a kill. It ran away.
The underwater thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that was, but I think it made up for the whole fact that we were just basically punting. I was one-shotting. Every time I hit the goblin, I one-shotted it.
Well,
It was just like that tentacle monster. That was, that was also...
You should have 50 points for every goblin that you punted.
Oh, 50 EXP?
Yeah.
I just wait for him to tell me when I can level up.
He's never going to tell us to level up. He's never going to give us a level up.
We'll just ask. It's like, hey, we've been in here for a while. Shouldn't we level up?
Maybe if we actually got the mini boss on that floor, but we didn't get the mini boss. And I think that's why we lost our DM, the 7-year-old, because the mini boss was above our heads, floating in the air. And we went the wrong direction for the mini boss. We went to the swamp, and yeah.
It happens.
That's a sad fact about living with the DM and the person educating the DM. I get to hear these things, and I'm like, I'm going to play dumb. I can't tell anyone I know this. I just laugh my ass off because I have a sea elf that can swim. Because the little DM was just like, yeah, everybody's going to like drown or something. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, there's a water feature. I'm like, you do know I'm a sea elf, right? And he's like, what? I'm like, it means I can swim and breathe underwater. And he's like, oh, do we need to change that? It's like, no, leave it alone. Hey, they didn't listen the last time I said I have a sea elf, so that's on them.
It's on them. Next piece of advice is don't attack unless you can win, and fall back when you can't, which is a smart move. You know, it's. I've seen a lot of DMs where the monsters have basically been like, we fight to the death. It's like, play them smart, have them go, run away, come back in greater numbers and better gear. You don't have to have everybody fight to the death. And if your party is going to fight to the death, then you're going to be rolling up a new character. So yeah, know when to pick your battles. Next piece of advice: loot the bodies. If you can get your gear from, that has been ingrained in me since like first D&D game, is just like, what do they got? What's still usable? What can we take back to town and sell? Like, you know, always check the bodies. And as a DM, you know, if you monsters ended up killing a whole party inside the dungeon, and you got like a bunch of orcs that just like brutally took care of the party, and the party's all got like some +1 magical armor, some magical weapons, some potions. Next time the party comes, a new party comes through, that those orcs are going to have some +1 gear, some magical potions. Next piece of advice: spread the wealth to gain allies. You know, if you're spending money and you're tipping the NPCs and you're developing a good relationship with them, you come back and you're like, or you're like, hey, listen, I don't need to make all this much on this stuff. Like, just throw me out a number. I dump in that bag of holding of all that looted armor off of all the things you've killed that had armor and weapons. You're just like, you just want to give me like a bulk. I know these swords are all crappy. You're probably just gonna have to smelt them down anyways. You just want to give me like I don't know, just make me an offer. Don't hoard the money, spend the money. People will know, oh, the adventurers are in town. Okay, well, let's impress them with stuff. It's like, yeah, we're coming in as conquering heroes, spreading the cash. And also, spread the wealth. You don't have to have the big bad evil guy in his lair has all the money and has all the treasure. He can give that to some underlings so they can have some cool toys. So they actually already come prepared with some +1 weapons and armor and healing potions. It's like, why are you gonna keep that money in the vault when you like got guards out there that need better gear? Attack before your opponent can set up. Always use, if you can, use surprise rounds to get an edge in combat. Use those. Don't enter a siege unless you have to, because again, that's going to deplete your resources. Sieges are always bad because you want to be able to resupply and restock. Don't boss around the other party roles. I think letting everybody have their time to be in the spotlight is a valuable piece of advice. You don't want to have somebody outshine everybody else, or somebody who isn't even the spellcaster be like, dude, you're doing this wrong. It's like, no, this is my character. Let me play my character. I know this is kind of contradictory to the spread the wealth, but don't show off. Wealth is also a piece of advice where it's because if you were walking around and you got like all that nice shiny gear and stuff like that, it's just going to tempt too many thieves to be like, hey, I'm just gonna loot this guy and get all that cool stuff myself. Know your strengths and weaknesses. I think that's part of like come prepared, have notes, and also let everybody have their turn to shine. Like, that if your character is not the face character of the party, they're not the one with all the social skills, but they're the ones that can. You're playing like the bard, where it's like, my thing is just like giving people advantage, giving them bonuses, helping them out. And the other, the paladin is the charisma character in the group that's actually like got the social skills. I know it's a bad example using the bard because usually the bard ends up being the face anyways. But no, know what you're doing in the party, help everybody else, and have that whole thing of people overlap, and where you're weak, you can step out of the spotlight. Don't let resources go to waste. We were talking about that kind of earlier. It's like manage your resources, but just don't hoard stuff then never use it. Move with the tempo. Again, sometimes the game is going to speed up, sometimes the game is going to slow down. Go with it. Don't try to rush it when it's supposed to be a slow moment, and be prepared so you can keep up with everyone else when it's going fast. Another piece of advice is go for the weak points. It's part of the reason why I like having my characters always have like 3 different weapons on them, because you usually come up against the whole thing of like, I like to have the bludgeoning weapon for when I'm dealing against skeletons. I want the slashing damage for when I'm against zombies, and the piercing damage is usually just about everybody else.
Yeah. That's why I like the trident. It can be slashing and stabbing or piercing. And then the warhammer is bludgeoning. And I have a sword too. And spears, javelins. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just gonna skip over a bunch of these. Again, because we're starting to sound redundant going over each of these. Treat henchmen like full party members is a good piece of advice. Don't treat the hired help as hired help. Because if you treat them as an equal member, then it ends up being like they're gonna fight better for you. You know, you can't just be like, okay, you just treat NPC lives matter.
Yes, they do.
All right.
Yes, they do.
And a good piece of advice: use force only as needed, not out of revenge. Don't go over to the dark side. Because it's if you're acting out of revenge, you're just tilting anyways, and you're just not focusing properly.
Quick question. Would setting up copious amounts of traps in various buildings in the opening scene, so one particular player just doesn't jot off into an area, setting up traps and making things go kaboom because they decide to wander in, is that considered what you just mentioned? And of course, there'll be reward tests. So for my next Saturday DM, I am going to have particular buildings with traps. The buildings are going to exist because it's part of the map, but they're going to have traps in them. And yes, reward chests. And for anyone that helps get the first person who set off the trap out of the trap, they get part of the rewards. And whoever does the most damage to the trap or successfully makes the trap disappear gets the most rewards. And anyone who didn't help with the trap, didn't set the trap off, doesn't get the reward.
Okay, so are these trap buildings? Is that like? Are you trying to get the players? Like, is it a punishment for the players going off script, going into the building? Or
one particular player, yes. Because I know one player is going to do it. The others aren't. They're not going to get curious. They're not going to poke.
There's like a couple different schools of thought of like, what do you do when the players go off script? One of them, and I love this one, it's one of my favorite ones, is the endless white plane with the blue lines.
Yeah.
Basically, the players have gone off script into an area where it's like, you're not supposed to go here. You basically it's like your character has stepped off onto the graph paper. It's an endless sea of white as far as you can see. White sky, white floor, just white. But every 5 feet, both vertically and horizontally, there are parallel blue lines. And it's as far as you can see. You've gone off the map into the grid paper. It's a very meta game response. And I think nowadays it would be the whole thing of like you open up the door and it's just like vector line graphings because like the room hasn't been rendered. Then there's the aspect of like you can't open the door. It's just a permanently sealed. Like you go to look at this and it's like the whole building is made out of stone. The door doesn't work. Video game logic of that. Another thing is just to look at the players beforehand and be like, I know there's buildings on here. The buildings don't matter. There's nothing in them. Skip over the whole fact of like, you guys, I'll say you guys have stopped and explored, but there's nothing in these buildings. Just disregard them on the map. Doing something like that alleviates the whole, well, somebody's going to go explore them and that's going to take away from time. You can just be like, tell everybody up front, there's nothing important in these buildings. It's just scenery. Disregard them. And I feel like that.
I did that with Josh, and he still went into the blacksmith because I want to check out the blacksmith shop. Well, there's nothing there. Well, I'm checking it out.
You check it out. There's nothing there. We're moving along.
What do I see? It's empty. No, there's something. Got to be something in the black. He tried taking over as DM. That's what he was trying to do. That's what I think. That's why I want to set up traps. So when he decides to pull that crap, I can blow him up. That's my whole thing. Is there's going to be traps, there's going to be rewards, but there's going to be bigger traps for going into spots that have nothing there.
I think this is a very valuable time to take a moment to have a talk with your player and be like, listen, it's just scenery like in the video game. There's nothing to interact with.
Okay.
Because sometimes you do have players like Josh who are basically like Chekhov's armory. If you have a like Chekhov's gun in narrative writing, it's the whole thing of like if there's a gun in the first act, it has to be fired in the second act or the third act. It's like something's there. It has to be. It's there for a reason. Which is why it's like a good idea to just do like very minimalist like setup. Just be like, if you describe anything at all to players, the player's like, ooh, that must be important. She described it to us. It's like, no, we're just window dressing.
It just happened to be on the map.
Yeah.
And he looked at the map?
It could be a whole thing of like, if it's just on the map, you just go, if he goes, I want to go inspect it. It's like, it's an old, abandoned, hasn't been used in any time. There's no tools. All it is just like the bellows of the fire pit. It's just the fire pit with like used up coals. The bellows, everything's covered. Everything's like metal is like rusted and about ready to fall apart. It's just an old, dilapidated, abandoned, hasn't been touched in like decades. Blacksmith workshop. It's run down. It would probably cost you like an arm and a leg to repair. You'd have to basically build a whole brand new thing. You just wouldn't have to do the stone work. It will save you 100. It will save you 100 gold on rebuilding. If you wanted to take the time to build a blacksmith forge here, like that, just old, dilapidated, not worth anything. Just here is window dressing. Moving on. And if they keep wanting to explore it, you just go, okay, you're wasting your time. We're moving on to the next person in the initiative order. What are you doing?
Okay.
Like that is part of this whole thing we're talking about. Like that's the whole like metagaming of like it's here. It's got to be something important. And it's like, no, you're moving on.
Okay.
All right. Next article in the magazine is war spells. They're new, more powerful versions. They're more powerful versions of normal spells used to fight armies instead of monsters. You need to have the war magic study feat, which requires you gotta have the feats greater fortitude and iron will. Basically, you've hardened your body and your mind to be able to channel these excess forces. Because basically it takes like a regular spell and amplifies it by a factor of like 25 or 100. So you have feed the many, and instead of creating food and water for like a full party of 5 players, you create enough food for 100 people. Cavalry call. It's like summon mount, but instead of summoning 1 horse, you summon 25. Again, there's a summon monstrous horde. Again, basically it's like all the summon monster spells. Again, instead of 1 monster, you get 25. Yeah, basically it's basically a way to amp up every spell. Instead of like 1 target, here's 25 targets. Because the magic missile one also does like instead of targeting 1 thing, it's 25 things, which would have been overkill because you get like 3 magic missiles into 1 target. If you're able to get 70, if you could do 75 magic missiles into 1 target, it would be completely and utterly broken. But just the whole fact of like, yeah, a war mage casting, Force Dart Storm. and just being like magic missile to an entire bunch of goblins. And the other thing they did to make sure these weren't overpowered is you actually have to study the you actually have to take like a full 10 turns, a full 1 minute of deeply studying the area of where you're going to be able to cast this spell. So it's definitely designed as like, okay, we're going to meet on the field of battle. War mages. Take your time. Figure it out. Okay. Ready to fight? All right. When they get to this point, we're going to cast this spell. When they get to that point in the battle, we're going to cast this spell. It was a really cool article. It really caught my attention, but then it was the whole thing of like how useful it would be because I never did any actual, none of my DMs actually like, okay, we're going to war, except for like one campaign. And I wasn't even the spellcaster for that one. I was like, oh man, I got the perfect friggin' rules to be able to use in this. But, oh yeah, and there was one other one. It was basically Teleport Legion. You get to pick everybody that's within 60 feet of you, that's part of that's allied with you, and you can just cast teleport on everybody within 60 feet of you.
I can do teleportation at level 7.
Yeah. Although I think that's like the one spell I'd like to use in an actual game where it's the whole fact of you have the big fight and then it's the whole like they know that the party is about ready to defeat everybody, and then they're like, okay, I will use my magical item of Teleport Legion and just take me and all of my surviving cronies, and we're just out of here. I think that would be a fun one to do.
Yeah, sometimes I wish I could have used that. Gone, how the hell am I going to save these guys? That's why I'm like hanging back. I'm like hanging back. It's safer to hang back. Let other people stumble into the traps and whatnots and hang back.
It sucks with my character right now has a negative dex modifier, so my armor sucks, but my hit points are good. And I can dish out a lot of damage, but my armor kind of sucks. So I wish I could hold back, but I can't hold back because my character is all built for, all gas, no brakes.
Yep.
So, all right. Next article is Paragons of War. It is the ecology of the hobgoblin as the most warfaring race of goblins. This gives you like a cultural study, how their society is built, their psychology. Also includes a map and notes on a hobgoblin lair. Next article is some new martial art styles. Notes on creating new martial art styles and some examples of them. First one is the Blue Mountain style. Gives you extra jumping and faster initiative. The Black Panda bonuses to monk abilities. Demon Wrestler gives you a +4 to grapple checks. There's another one that gives you dodge and AC bonuses. Broken Fist gives you bonuses to trip attacks. And it also includes some notes on a martial arts style D&D campaign. So if you really want to get into the Kung Fu style game, they gave you some ideas how to set up. Like everyone is a monk of the same school on a quest. So you give everybody everybody's got at least one level of monk and then something else. Then you could have the big bad evil guys all be monks, and the party must learn to be able to learn a new martial arts style in order to fight them. You can set up the campaign to be based more on feudal Japan, where only the nobles are allowed to have weapons. So the PCs, being lowborn, have to use unarmed combat. Again, that's a good one where everyone gets a level of monk. And or you have everyone is from a different school of martial arts and brought together to hunt down new secret evil school of martial arts that's developing a new style.
Okay.
I think they missed out on putting one down there for the idea that I've always wanted to do was the Mortal Kombat type thing, where it's like you have everyone's been summoned to basically fight in the martial arts tournament. Next article is Incursion, a world under siege. So this one, this is a tie-in with the Dungeon magazine. They started doing a campaign in issue 100 where the Githyanki are invading the realm. And so we got some notes for players on the Gith interplanar ships to go between the ethereal plane and the mortal and the material plane where the actual people are. Some Gith NPCs by level and campaign and arcs in the campaign. Section on how to fight the Gith with there's some feats to gain some like Githyanki and anti-psionic slang capabilities. And that was basically, at the end of the article. I think they skipped out on a few things just to be able to have some more space. That issue, where they basically all the Gith fighting stuff was tied into the Wizard Workshop. And they had a lot of articles that felt all very Wizard Workshop-y, so there's not really a lot of like advice just to players and DMs. And they skipped the Gygax, like this issue and next issue. I think they skipped Gygax's up on a soapbox. But
yeah,
no, that was going to war.
all right. A lot of redundant information there, but that's okay.
It's okay. It's a lot of redundant stuff, but and they really were pushing at this point a lot of the martial arts styles, because I think we've gotten martial arts styles like almost every issue so far for a little while, where they're like, it feels to me like there's been a lot in the past couple of reviews of like, here's a new martial arts style, here's a new martial arts style. I'm like, they really went overboard, like trying to make, like they really wanted the monk to step forward in 3.5, because
Was
a lot
it
of
the three ninjas that came out at that time when this was coming out.
This was
Plus
not
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and
no, because this was early 2000. This was early 2000s. This is like 2000.
yeah, and they remade the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like every decade. So
yeah, true.
Yeah.
It probably was.
Mortal Kombat did come out in the early 2000s. Mortal Kombat came out in movie form.
Mortal Kombat 1 came out in the 90s, and I think it was 2000 when we got Annihilation, but that one flopped.
Yeah.
But
there was a lot of ninja stuff coming out. I remember. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
because
the
I was
time.
moving.
Yeah. And 3.5 is when you started seeing a lot of people being like, I want to play a monk. I want to play a monk, because monks were kind of broken in 3.5. Like, you got all the good attacks, HP, and stuff like that. You got a bunch of skills. You got to do like multiple attacks with the flurry of blows. So it was like, and if you had a monkish weapon, then you could do the flurry of blows with it. So monks were actually pretty good. The only reason why you actually wanted to go with a fighter was a lot of the time you just wanted to have like, it was like the more feats you wanted to have, like a baseline fighter in 3rd and 3.5. Nobody really wanted to play just a basic fighter unless you were really going for like some stupid feat combination. And we're basically doing like, one of the things I found we used so broken 3.5 was to play the Stone Giant, the Stone Child. It was basically it was like the half breed between a stone giant and a human. They were medium sized, but they counted as being large. So instead of having a 5-foot reach, they had a 10-foot reach. They got like a +4 to their strength modifier. So basically you could take power attack, cleave, improve cleave, and with a stone giant, you could basically walk through a horde of small monsters, say goblins, hobgoblins, anything, and maybe and orcs, like anything that somebody was going to, like a DM was going to be like, I'm sending like 20 of these things at you because that's what's good challenge for your level. And you just have the stone giant, the stone child up front with the biggest weapon they can muster, take one swing and cleave through like cleave through like the 6 they can reach. Then it's because they dropped something on their cleave, they get to take a free 5-foot step forward, which allowed them to reach 3 more things, drop all of those. So you could have this big, massive barbarian or fighter, because you want to do a fighter because you got all these feats like really fast, like 5th, 6th level. You're just swing, drop 6 things, step forward, drop 3 more. Oh, step forward, another step, drop, and you just march through the hallway just until you miss something and you weren't able to actually kill everything. Or you're playing the dervish that did the same kind of thing but with slashing weapons, where you're like, every time you attack something and drop something, you get to move on to the next thing and attack. And it was just like, I think that's actually the build that my buddy went for. He ended up being like the stone child fighter until he had enough levels to prestige class into the dervish, and then he was just like mauling through things. But he had, instead of like normal scimitars, he had like these huge scimitars because he counted it as large so you could have bigger weapons. It was just nasty. But it was like only thing you wanted to do for fighter was just take the levels to get the feats in order to get into the prestige class. Monk was like, I don't have to do all of that. I can just get the abilities and have more and have better skills. So yeah, they really were pushing the monk. But yeah, that's all I got for this issue.
All right. I've gotten ideas on what not to do as a DM and what to do as a player, so that way I don't drag out the game and I stay on task.
Which is just basically the core of being a good DM and a good player, is just you only got an hour and a half to 2.5 hours to hang out and play the game. Might as well use the time effectively. That way everybody feels like I got to do stuff and I didn't waste my night coming out. So
I never consider it a waste. It's like we get to hang out with friends.
all right, it's a side conversation. Okay, all right. That's
all right.
That's a side conversation. Let's wrap up the episode. We'll have the side conversation so we can. I think we might in sometime in the future we're going to be starting to put these up on Patreon. I'm going to let everybody know you get the full unedited version by joining our Patreon. But if you want to support in any way, there's links down below. Wait, Laura's got this all in the outro. It's just for us to say goodbye. Yeah. So I'm going to say peace.
Peace. See you next week.
All right.
Hey, honey?
Yeah, what's up?